Hey everybody, good day to you. It is the Desert Viking coming at you once again with some thoughts from my mind. Taking a little break from reading from the Kabbalion, we'll do that next time. And in this little episode, I'd like to brain dump for you some thoughts going into mid-spring. And that is essentially to discuss what is the point of suffering and how does one survive being zeroed out? If you're not familiar with the term being zeroed out, a lot of times you will hear that typically be referenced as saying towards men, though it can apply to anyone. Being zeroed out is to reduce something to zero. When one loses their job, loses their wife, loses their house, basically plays the whole country music song for you. They are essentially zeroed out, is an example of being zeroed out. And the older one gets, I guess I would say that in my experience, the less tolerance for being zeroed out we get, especially if we spent a good portion of our lives kind of successful or at least getting by. So once a person reaches middle age, I've noticed that when they encounter their first time being zeroed out, it's a truly devastating experience for them because they haven't been prepared for it. And indeed, I've known a lot of men and one woman who have taken the route of removing themselves from the game. And almost entirely, it came down to being zeroed out in one way or the other. And being zeroed out is something we all have encountered at least once or will encounter at least once. Some of us will encounter being zeroed out multiple times in our lives. And like anything, the more you practice at something, the better you get. And why this was important. Well, it's important for a number of reasons, a number of streams that have converged to make me want to do this video. Number one, I've known a lot of people, mostly men. I said all but one, so I think 16 people I've known in my life at this point that I've been a part of burying, and all but one were men. Many of them were veterans. Most of them felt like they were discarded. And so during a talk a week ago, the question came up, if there's a God, why does he allow suffering? So that's one streamer. The second streamer being I've known people who, again, this happened to them and they chose the route of permanent deletion. So these things are important to me. I'm pursuing my master's degree in, I want to get out of tech, for sure. I don't see any good things coming from that industry anymore, especially with AI. But I'm getting my master's degree in counseling and therapy. And my goal is to sit with and help other people who may have gone through devastating things and don't know where to go, what to do. It's a strong calling I've had most of my life. And I recognize that to be a good counselor, you have to have your shit together as well. So there is that. It helps me get my own shit together, right? So that's my goal. I want to do those things. And so the point of suffering is going to come up a lot. And I wanted to share that with you all on how to survive being zeroed out. And I alluded to the fact that this is something that mostly men encounter, but it is not limited to only men. It's just that men will typically be the ones that bear the burden of labor and performance. So when a man's purpose is gone and he can't support himself anymore, he's been taken out of the game essentially, or his wife leaves him and takes his kids, and all of those things that we read about, if you've not yet lived them, those can be very devastating, and it's a tricky road to recover from. And I will say, if you have been zeroed out before, it's not something you fully recover from. because it leaves some trauma behind. And anything that leaves trauma behind physically will alter your physiology. And I've done other videos on this type of topic before with recovering from trauma. If you're new to the channel, this channel started about a year ago. We're coming up on a year. And it was in response to me being zeroed out. Pretty much in every way, shape, and form. I saw this as an opportunity for me not only to document my own recovery, but to provide an example of one way one can go about recovering from being reduced to nothing. And to abbreviate my little story, this time last year I was getting ready to get married. I had a wedding planned. I had sunk a bunch of money into that. I had bought this house for someone. And in May, that individual chose to opt out, essentially. Say, I've never been interested in you. All this stuff that you've built up here, the house, and this life 2,000 miles away from anyone you knew was a lie. It was an illusion, and I never felt these things for you, is what she told me. And she walked out the door, and I haven't talked to her since. So that was the first. You don't really need anything more than that, to be honest. If that totally cored me. And then the universe decided we were going to really test you. And it's funny. Well, I've laughed the whole way. If you watch the videos, I do chuckle quite a bit at it because when you think about it, it's like, wow. About a month after she walked out the door, I lost my job to the tech layoffs. And 2 years ago, I've been in tech for 30 years. My career has spanned over 30 years. It's coming on 31 years. I've never had a hard time finding work, ever. And there's no work. So that's terrifying, right? So I lost my job. I'm living a country song here. Lost my almost wife. And the only thing I'd left, I'm working out. I'm trying to recover my physical pillar because, got to be strong, right? And my Achilles went out last August. And so I couldn't walk. I had no job. And she had left me. Basically walked out the door, grabbed her stuff and left. And I moved 2,000 miles here to the desert to be with her. I knew nobody. So that's my zeroing out tale. Now, I've been zeroed out before. This was the most extreme version of hell that I can say that I've personally lived through from an emotional standpoint. I had nothing. I literally had nothing. I had no support, nothing. No way to support myself. Guys, it was bad. Okay. So how do you get over that? How do you survive that? What is the point of all of that? Like, what is the point? Like, if there's a God, why would he allow that? That's the question you get asked a lot. So I come at that from two directions. And first, let me just say this, and I will say this in most videos. Number one, all the thoughts I have are my own opinions. I don't speak for anyone else. I joined Freemasonry as a way to help rebuild myself because I heard a voice saying it's time to rebuild. And Freemasonry was something that I should have joined 25 years ago. But now it was my time. All right, so rebuild myself. I had to rebuild myself. I heard that voice. It's time to do it. So how does an esoteric Freemason rebuild themselves? And does that even have any bearing on you? If you're not an esoteric Freemason, can I not follow what you did? Of course not. Being esoteric simply means that I study things that most people aren't very interested in. We call, secret knowledge. It's not really secret because you can go out and anything I know about you can obtain. It's not like it's classified or secret information. But you do a lot of thinking about thinking. And that's all I did. Was a lot of thinking about thinking. Now, I said there's two ways that I approach this as an esoteric Freemason. And I wanted to say, number one, I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers. I am not a guru. There are many people that have different perspectives that I appreciate. Okay. Number two, I do not speak for all Freemasons in the world. So when I post these videos, I am not speaking for every Freemason that exists. They all have their own opinions. There is no set code in the order that says you will be an esoteric Freemason. In fact, most are not. So everything I'm saying to you is just from my opinion as someone who follows that path, but I am not speaking for an entire group of people. And some of them would probably disagree with a lot of what I say and do. So keep that in mind. So coming at this question, surviving being zeroed out. I don't believe that anyone should permanently remove themselves from the board for a temporary problem. Anytime a problem presents itself, big or small, there is an opportunity for you to grow, to strengthen, to find where you're weak at, and fortify those weaknesses. In fact, I think that anytime you are given these opportunities, and they are opportunities, being zeroed out is an opportunity to show yourself and the world what you are made of. It's not pleasant going through it by any stretch of the imagination. Did anything I went through or any of the things that you may have gone through in your life that are considered being zeroed out, would those be considered fun or easy? No matter what people tell you, and they tell you, oh, poor you, there's always something worse because people like to have their scoreboard. You go through what you go through. And devastating loss is a devastating loss. Someone coming up to try to yeah-but you and show you why someone else has it worse. I've learned a few things in my life, and one of those is that there's a never-ending supply of people who will argue with you. And there's a never-ending supply of people who will try to tear you down at all times if they can. Inexhaustible. They will always be there. So you have to learn to just adapt to that. Anytime something bad happens to you is your opportunity, which is why I started the channel. This was an opportunity to reflect on growth and to watch growth and to observe and identify ways I could make myself better, to identify where my own problems may have contributed to the zeroing out, because there's always going to be those things. And to worry about the things that I have control over and to not worry about the things that I have no control over is very important. I see life in two different ways when it comes to suffering. Number one, I follow more of the Gnostic tradition, if you want to put a name on it, because it's fun to have labels and it kind of gives people an idea. And in the Gnostic tradition, we see this world as kind of a prison. This is where a lot of people will disagree with me because not everyone agrees that the world's a prison, and that's good for them. For me, I don't enjoy being in the physical world. I've never really enjoyed it, even as a young boy. I don't seek power. I don't seek wealth over other people. I am more of a person who likes a small community of people that all have roles, and we do our roles, and, we are stronger together. That's always been what I like. And I live in a world that is totally opposite of that. So I am very much not a fan of the physical world at all. Now, being not a fan of the physical world doesn't mean that I can't accept the fact that I'm here. And I'm going to do the best I can for the reasons that I've been put here. And we all have a reason why we've been put here. Or we like to think we have a reason why we've been put here. I will believe that I have a reason to be here. And that reason for me, what I believe is, as this world's a prison, for me anyway, it certainly feels like one. Finding people of like mind is difficult, and it's a world built to test you. It is a forge or a crucible in the purest form. When we were shattered from the divine, we fell. And part of that falling, for every action there's a reaction, we will rise again. And I believe that. I believe humanity will rise again. I fully believe the theosophical tenets that show the progression of the human condition, as it were, throughout the course of history. And that history extends well beyond what we accept as the beginning of history. And that we will rise again to meet the divine. I think that is the plan. And to do that, you have to be tested. We were sent here to be tested and to experience pain and evil, to experience it. Now, from the crucible standpoint, and maybe this is more for me from the masculine standpoint, every bad thing that happens to you is the equivalent of a sword on the blacksmith's bench being hammered by a hammer or being thrust into the flames of the forge. The strongest swords are not made from comfort. The strongest swords are not made from complacency. The strongest swords are steel, and they are melted by extreme heat. Very uncomfortable. They are poured into a mold, and from that mold they are cooled into a shape that vaguely resembles a sword, and then, while still hot, that steel is beaten on by a hammer over and over and over again. Every once in a while it is thrust back into the flames to reheat it, where it is then put back on the anvil and beaten by that hammer over and over and over again. At the end, you have a sword. You have a strong sword with a good edge. But to get to that sword, you have to go through a lot of discomfort. Discomfort for the material itself, the steel. Discomfort from the blacksmith who has to bend the steel to his will. That is every opportunity that you have every time something bad happens to you. That is a hammer from the blacksmith forging you. Now, it's not enough to simply take something bad and learn from it and not do anything about it. If you aren't actively changing your habits or actively changing your behaviors or actively changing how you take care of yourself, whatever it is that you're trying to overcome, it's not enough to just know about it. You actually have to take action to do something about it. And that means cutting through all the excuses and all the bullshit that you're going to weave around why you can't do it. It's easier to just take yourself off the board than it is to recover from being zeroed out. But that's the first way I see the world. The second way, from the Kabbalah, the Kabbalist's viewpoint, we have descended through the 5 worlds to the physical world. And upon the physical world, we are here to experience darkness and evil and good and beauty. And this is an advantage that humans have over, say, the angels. Because angels cannot experience everything that we can. Angels are driven by their mission. An angel has a mission. No 2 angels have the same mission. And those angels they can't experience the breadth of experience that we can. That is why we're here. And so we collect these experiences. And we are driven to want to seek pleasure. We are driven to want to feel good. We are driven to avoid things that are unpleasant. And so suffering is thrust upon us to provide us the opportunity for growth, yes, but also when one suffers, one tends to get closer to God. So it is a form of helping you get closer to God through suffering. That's what the Kabbalists believe. That in the pure spiritual sense, there is only the Creator, and only the Creator, there is no evil. Evil only exists in our universes. And so to experience evil, we have to come down to the physical world, where we will grapple with darkness and light. And I'm a big proponent of needing both. And so one of the conflicts I have, and it's maybe not even a conflict, it's something I need to meditate on personally more, but as you rise back up through the ranks, darkness will be defeated and be gone. But while we're here on the physical world, it exists. It exists in its totality. And we have to find that line to walk and not be consumed by darkness. And I believe we don't want to be consumed by light. We're not ready for that yet. We have to find that line. And so there's where suffering comes from, the point of suffering from the Kabbalist. Maybe one of the points of suffering from a Kabbalist standpoint is to be brought closer to God. So that is the point of suffering from me, and surviving being zeroed out from someone who has been zeroed out many times in my life and who was completely and utterly destroyed last year and spent an entire year rebuilding. And there's nothing to be ashamed about when you're zeroed out. There is only an opportunity for growth. There's no room to run away from the problem because it will always be there. You have to run through the problem, and that is what I believe. It gives you an opportunity to sit back, detach yourself from what's currently going on, and say, where did I contribute to this condition that I find myself in? And how can I strengthen myself so that this can be learned from and we move on? And those are hard lessons to learn. They sound easy a lot of the time. Oh, well, I just don't do this, right? I eat better, or I don't do drugs, or I don't drink a lot of booze, or I stop smoking, or I get out and work out and lose weight, or whatever it is. Whatever it is that's your problem that you're facing always sounds easy to vocalize, but is more difficult to actually put into action. So that is your challenge. Put those things into actual action, because we are only on this plane in this incarnation for a very short time before we come back. And we will learn the lessons either in this life or the next. The last thing I'll touch on, which comes from another question that I got earlier this week. Revenge, retribution. Someone put you here. Someone zeroed you out. You need to get back at them. Okay. Revenge is a natural state. It's a natural desire that stems from one of the four cardinal virtues. And that virtue is justice. We are driven to want justice, which is what revenge is. It's you forcibly evening the scales. Now, there's a few things that I follow when it comes to this topic. Number one, it is not my place to correct the scales unless I am explicitly told to by God. And I have yet to be instructed to do so. So I don't take it upon myself to do those things. Number two, we're taught in the Hermetic philosophy that every action will have a reaction, as above, so below, right? If someone wrongs you, well, there's different ways of being wronged. Did they maliciously do it? Did they, is it an accident? All those things. It doesn't matter if you accidentally or purposely do harm. You have, like putting your finger into water, into a bowl, you have caused ripples. The more severe the damage you have done, the more severe the ripples, the greater the return of investment that you will receive. I can promise you, and why I don't subscribe to revenge is simply this. The scales even themselves out in the end. And carrying the weight of that revenge, even if you just desire it. If you desire it and don't act on it, or you actually act on it, you're going to carry the weight of that with you forever. And when it comes time to weigh your heart, that is going to be presented on the scales. It's totally not worth carrying revenge around at all. And so when I'm asked the question, well, what about revenge and retribution? Da, 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 let it go. Let it go and let things sort themselves out. I promise you they will sort themselves out. But that's not your place. Your place is to rebuild yourself and move on down the road in a different direction. Thank you for taking the time to watch. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. Give me a subscribe. By liking, you allow me to be visible in the YouTube world and not be hidden. I do appreciate you tuning in. I look forward to any comments you may have. And until next time, we will get back to the Hermetic principles and the Kabbalion. I will see you then.